Hello and welcome to episode 40 of the Dynamo Football Book Club. My name's Al Bond and I'm with my co-host Johnny Coughlin. Hi Johnny.
Hey Al, how you doing?
Very well, thanks matey. This week we're doing Flight to Bogota, the story of Neil Franklin by John Leonard. Do you want to discuss our new name, Johnny?
Well, yeah, Al, it's episode 40, as you say, and it's maybe just a little reflection. I see since the rebrand now, we've broken into the top 100 football podcasts in the UK and up to number 36 in Poland. Big shout out to our friends in Poland, 67 in Sweden. So that's all very good, and it's very, very encouraging. Thank you very much, everyone who is listening. Please do tell your friends to listen. We've got the new website, dynamofootballbookclub.com. We've also just started a Reddit community under the name of Dynamo Football Book Club. I believe it's just me and you, Al, so far. But we really would like to hear from people, to hear what they think about the episodes, but also just to chat about books more broadly, to hear recommendations or just about football writing generally. It would be great to hear from you.
Yeah, man, and it should be easier now to recommend it because it's not Adamola Bookman. It's Dynamo Football Book Club, which is easier. It is easy. That was the problem, just Adamola Book. What's that? How'd you spell that? Terrible name.
Just on that, the segue, Al, terrible name. Do you think Neil Franklin, do you remember what his given name was?
Yeah, Cornelius, Johnny. Are all Neils Cornelius and not telling me that?
Well, I don't know. I have a friend called Cornelius, and he goes by Neelis. But then do you think like Neil Shipperley is Cornelius?
Yeah, Neil Webb, Cornelius Webb.
Neil Ruddock, Razor Cornelius.
Razor Cornelius.
Do you think that this guy, Neil Franklin, is the last Cornelius to play in the First Division? Or as you say, are all these other guys secret Corneliuses?
I mean, I don't. Is that a thing? Is that where Neil comes from? Does Neil come from Cornelius? Is that something I've never known? I guess it must be. Hey, Johnny, can I just give a shout out to my bar as well? Hide Ahead in DeLand, Florida. Anyone coming in mentioning the Dynamo Football Book Club will get $2 off their beers. Yes, they will. $2.
Very nice indeed.
Cough up, Jeff. Cough up.
So I know you ask me every week, so let me turn the question back on you. So what did you know about Neil Franklin before you read this book?
Absolutely nothing. I've never heard of him, which is weird because apparently he's described as like the great English defender of yesteryear.
Well, in the book, the way the guy talks, the author speaks about central defenders in England at the time. It was like there was a 20-year period where there was only one of any skill or talent.
Yeah, that's it. When old Neil Franklin buggered off, like they could only pull him like a 38-year-old man who's like a hero of yesteryear to play. Yeah, it does sound that way.
Yeah, the oldest ever England debutante.
Oh, Dennis Compton. Yeah. I mean, that's it. All the peripheral characters in this book, Johnny, I'd heard of. Almost every single one. But I'd never heard of old Neil Franklin.
Well, we've had this before with the book on Duncan Ferguson, for example, where the author seemed to inflate how important Duncan Ferguson was. Is it possible that the same thing was happening here with Neil Franklin? I think maybe.
Well, I thought that. He had all these games, never scored a fucking goal. Like one goal in like 300 games. Like so, they're telling me, oh, what a beautiful foot he had. He couldn't score, so not that good, even if he was a central defender. But then on the other hand, like Tom Finney put him in his greatest ever team. Stanley Matthews put him in his greatest ever team. So I don't know, but maybe football was just proper rubbish back then.
Well, on that point, did you see there was a guy he played against for Arsenal called Kevin O'Flanagan? Did you notice this guy? He was an Irish fella who played international football for Ireland and played international rugby for Ireland and was a medical doctor. No, that's one accomplished man.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think anyone in the world could do those three things at once anymore. So yeah, I guess the barriers for entry were a lot lower back in the day. By the way, Al, the guy who debuted for England at the age of 38 and 64 days was Leslie Compton, the England centre back.
Oh, okay, yeah, and he was brother of Dennis Compton, right? Who was the cricketer? That's why I said Dennis Compton. Yes.
Well, maybe just by way of background, we'd come across this Colombia Dimayor League, reading about it in Di Stefano's book. So Di Stefano was there for 3 years. And obviously this is a pretty fascinating little episode that happened in world football that I had no awareness about whatsoever. So it was fun. It was fun to get this book and to read more about it. So will we just jump into it?
Well, you thought it was fun, did you, Johnny? Because that wasn't my feelings. Yeah, let's get into it right now.
Let me be clear. I said it was fun getting this book is what I said.
All right, man. Okay, well, I'll agree with that. Yeah, lovely stuff. Let's get into it. The story of milquetoast Neil Franklin, the most pathetic man who ever walked the earth, and his flight to Bogota. First of all, the book is called Flight to Bogota, which is in itself sounds very, very interesting. But John Leonard, the writer, just fundamentally does not understand what is interesting about the whole story. To me, man, he focuses on the most boring things I've ever seen in my life. My God, I got to like page 85. I've been reading for like an hour and a half. There wasn't even a sniff of Colombia yet. There was a shitload about Stanley Matthews, a shitload about a boy named Sue, but fuck all about Colombia. And I was like, I can't wait for this to come. Well, I don't want to spoil it.
I read it on Kindle. It was 49% into the book when he played his first game in Colombia. So yeah, absolutely. And he spent the first 40% of the book talking about Franklin's career, which was a very impressive career. They nearly won the league with Stoke, and that is interesting. This guy was a man during the Second World War. He was drafted into the RAF and he was playing in these exhibition games for soldiers. That in itself is interesting enough, but it's not why I bought this book. When we spoke in the Di Stefano episode, we talked about this La Violencia, this period of Colombian history, when these guys were there, and there was this incredible kind of civil war going on in which 200,000 people died. And this was the background to all of the stuff that was happening with these guys flying to play in Colombia, but nothing about those elements. So yeah, there was a lot. It was very much the perspective, the angle of the book was how this was seen through the eyes of the kind of pearl-clutching English patrician FA men, right? That's the kind of perception or the angle that we're looking at this episode from, right?
Yeah, so there he is. He's trying to present Neil Franklin as like striking a blow for footballers against the football club owners. But I just think it's erroneous. I don't think he did anything at all. And like the actual changes only came like 10 years later with your likes of your Jimmy Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took against Neil Franklin, Johnny. I did indeed.
By the early 1950s, the 92 Football League clubs in England were attracting 40 million spectators a season. So the idea is money was coming into football in a big way at this point. And they had this retain and transfer system, which essentially meant that, you know, as we kind of know, everybody who follows football knows this kind of vaguely, that clubs were just total masters and could do whatever they want. What they didn't know is that they held the registration of players even beyond their contract. So if you had a 2-year contract and that was up, and they decided not to sell you, there was not much you could do about that. And that's kind of the gripe that Neil Franklin and Stanley Matthews before him had with Stoke, that, like, this thing about, I couldn't really get to the... Franklin had a big problem with Stoke, all right from the start, but I couldn't really put my finger on what his problem with them was.
I did some additional research, and I heard him and McCrory, who is the manager of Stoke during his period there, really didn't get along. So Neil Franklin was a defender who would like tippy-tap around. He was a ball-playing defender, and I think from the sounds of it, he often got caught out. There's one point Ron Atkinson said, like, someone told him he had a little trick And like he was doing his little trick, and Ron Atkinson, by the way, just dispossessed him and scored. And it's like, there you go. So he was a real ball playing thing. And I believe that McCrory, his manager, just wanted him to play the ball earlier. And he didn't want to do that. And they had fundamental differences. So I think his big problem was the manager, from what I could make out.
Well, McCrory must be a bit of an idiot, because he had Stanley Matthews, and Matthews wanted to leave to go to Blackpool, which he obviously did eventually, because that's where Matthews is that's the team Matthews is most associated, right, with. But at some point, Matthews was kind of agitating for a move, but then he kind of was back in the fold, and they were going for the league, and the guy McCrory just wouldn't play him. Stanley Matthews was the first Ballon d'Or winner, am I right in saying that? And they're not even playing this guy. They're not even playing him. Come on, Stoke. And they lost the league right at the end to Liverpool. And one can assume that if you got that close, if you had been playing arguably the best player in the world at the time, you might have pushed it over the line. And that McCrory guy was there all throughout this thing. So managers were held to much lower standards maybe than they are today, because obviously managers get the boot so quickly now.
So that's what the first third of this book is, basically. There's like contract disputes with Stanley Matthews. He gets away. There's a player called Frank Sue. Had you ever heard of Frank Sue? He was the first non-white player to play for England. You heard of him, eh?
I mean, I heard of him insofar as I remember him from the book.
Okay, all right, sorry. But not before, right?
Had you heard of him before?
No, absolutely not. Only the Johnny Cash song. And he also got away. He got out of contract, but like the first third of this book is just dedicated to like the problems with players' contracts, and I'm reading this going, ooh. Oh, and I just like the lovely oasis of Colombia's coming up, though. I'll read about all this football man's contract from the 1940s. Go on, I'll read it if I must. But, I know that I've got lovely Colombia to come.
Frank Sue was of mixed English and Chinese heritage.
Yeah, it was very interesting that he was accepted in the way he was. I don't know what you would expect as a man of mixed race in England in the 1940s, but he was very popular, right?
Yeah, and this is right after the Second World War as well. He made his debut for England in 1942, right in the middle of the war. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's a book.
Sweet,
I'm going to look into that. We can find another kind of quite dry book about someone from the 1940s. But did you think that stuff about the war was interesting, the Second World War?
Honestly, no. There were some interesting things. There was a terrible tragedy where like 80,000 people turned up for a Stoke versus Bolton game, which just seems absolutely insane. But 33 dead. They were taken off a field akin to Hillsborough. People charged in it. Apparently, they were forced to play, and they had to march through a tunnel full of dead bodies to get back out to the pitch. So that sounds rather grim.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? But I think the justification for continuing was the idea that if they called the game off, it would create a riot, essentially. So that was the rationale, at least. But yeah, imagine that. Absolutely awful. And then unsurprisingly, they just kind of strolled around and played out a 0-0 draw or whatever. But yeah, that is grim.
Yeah, sympathetic character, Neil Franklin, blamed the fans. Yeah, there he is. Just like Cloughie. Other fun stories, he was kidnapped by students for Rag Week and was late for a game. And his manager was furious, but he thought it was funny. I mean, of course his manager was furious. Like, he's always blaming everyone else, old Neil. Like, I couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't my fault. I didn't want to do that. He's an infuriating character.
You really took against Neil Franklin.
I really did, bruv. Yeah, I did. It's just so useless. Well, I mean, we'll come to it later, but nothing was ever his fault. Nothing ever. Everything he did. But we'll come to this. But
just by way of background, he is from Stoke himself. He's Stoke born and bred, which is, he's hometown hero. Yeah, I think he constantly had gripes with management at Stoke, as he said. But then at some point, the mayor, or who was it? There was like a kind of an official ceremony in Stoke, and they made a big song and dance about him and said he was the best player ever to play for Stoke and stuff like that. So it does sound like he was a big deal.
Yes. But on the other hand, no.
Who do you dislike more between the Stoke legends of Neil Franklin or Jesse Rodriguez, or as we know him, JM, the the World Cup winning reggaeton superstar that we listened to a few episodes back?
I prefer Jesse Rodriguez. I do. I just think he'd be more fun. Oh, God, hanging out with Neil Franklin. Oh, God, he'd be boring.
Well, we just fast forward to 49% into the book because the reason we got the book was to talk about the Colombia stuff. He is regularly having these kind of problems with Stoke, and he's agitating to leave. Hull City are in for him, and they want to pay big money, even though they're in the second division. But because of this retain and transfer system, they won't let him go. And this is what happened with Matthews as well. So there is prior there. And
so can I come in? So yes, so they were willing to pay £30,000 for him, which would have been a world record fee at the time. So obviously he was a big deal. But on the other hand, Hull City, they were in the second division. They had a moneyed owner, but if he's so fucking great, like I keep being told, like he's the player of his generation, where were all the big teams? Why did none of the big teams? At no point does a big team ever come in for him that I can make out. And I realise that big teams were different then, but like it's always like, oh, Leicester were interested in him, Derby, like Hull, like, ooh, player of his generation, ooh, is he going to go Leicester? Yeah, I just thought it just nothing added up. But like, yeah, so he was very keen to go to Hull, but he was still contracted to Stoke, and the maximum wage at the time was £12 a week, right?
Yes.
And like £10 a week in the summer, the maximum wage, yeah.
It's mad. But you say that, you question the claims. He played all 27 England games in the immediate post-war period. He played them all, one after the other. And, you're talking about a time when there was, who were the foreign players in England? Fellas from Scotland, Ireland and Wales and Northern Ireland. So he was the best centre-half in England at the time. There's no question about that on the basis of him being called up for England all the time.
Well, that and Billy Wright, right? There's a lot of Billy Wright, and I think Billy Wright was the other guy.
He came a little bit later.
He came a little bit later, okay, fair enough, yeah.
But so what's happening is he's having this gripe with Stoke, and ultimately this guy wants to make a living, right? He wants to get paid. And there's kind of some shady machinations going on in the background with some. And, here is the interesting and the exotic side of things. So this guy who's the kind of club owner of Santa Fe is the team that he goes to play for in Bogota. He's a Colombian diplomat, marries a English socialite lady, 12 years his senior. And he's kind of sneaking around in the background trying to tap up these players, essentially. That's the stuff that's exciting and interesting. But instead we hear a lot about kind of, boardroom level griping about the players. So I would have liked to hear more. And did you see there was a fella involved called George Mendes?
Yeah, I did notice that, yeah.
Yes.
Always got their fingers in the pies, and the George Mendes. Been around much longer, much older than I thought.
Much older than I thought. But yeah, so they're, it's all very cloak and dagger, isn't it? That's all quite exciting, but...
I was going to say that, Johnny, but I do think the author tries to hype that up a bit, because there's one bit where Luis Robledo, who's the guy who recruits him, he sends a letter to Neil Franklin, and he sends it via Stoke City, and he's like, the author's like, this ticking time bomb was just sitting there at Stoke City until unknowingly a employee gives it to Neil Franklin. Boo! It's a fucking letter. It's a letter that he sent to his place of work, and he receives it. It's like, okay, calm down. So yeah, he sends him a letter. And he's promised these untold riches, so he's on £12 a week, and they get $2,500 just for signing on for this Santa Fe. So imagine that. Yeah,
it's wild, isn't it? And he plays for Stoke at the end of the season in 1950, the 49-50 season. 2 days later, himself and his teammate George Mountford, who he didn't know was also being tapped up by this letter-writing socialite marrying diplomat, is also going. The two of them are going together.
The writer John Leonard, has he ever been to Colombia?
I would say probably not.
Yes, I would say definitely not. Because
There's very little. Anyway, we'll come to it. But
yeah, we'll get to that. Yes.
To get from Stoke, it's a train from Stoke to London, a flight to Shannon in Ireland, then to Goose Bay in Colombia, then on to LaGuardia in New York, an overnight stop in New York, and then the next day from Idlewild to Miami, Miami to Cuba, Cuba to Kingston, and then to Barranquilla in Colombia on the coast, and then finally on to Bogota for the roughest flight of them all. That is a heck of a journey, isn't it?
I don't think I'd ever fucking leave if I had to do that in reverse. I could just be like, it's not worth it. I'll stay. Yeah, that is absolutely grueling. Yeah, the local papers get wind of it. So a bit more context. He gets selected for the England team in 1950, but he turns it down. And this is the start of it. Like, why does he turn it down? Oh, my wife's pregnant. Oh, I couldn't leave my wife to go. No. I couldn't leave my wife to go and play in the World Cup. No. I would force my wife to travel over several continents whilst pregnant. I would do that, but I wouldn't leave her to go and play for the World Cup, play in the World Cup.
Yeah, so the World Cup was on in Brazil. It was England's first World Cup. They were beaten by a team of US amateurs. It's funny, isn't it? Because remember we talked about Matt Letizia, and Matt Letizia didn't leave the South Coast. One of the reasons was his wife didn't want to move to London, or didn't want to move north of London, or whatever it was. But Vera, the wife of Neil Franklin, when Hull came in for her, she's like, no, I don't really want to leave Stoke. He's, well, I've got good news for you, Vera. We're going to Bogota. And yeah, it's funny. It was because that seemed to be the longest pregnancy ever. Because it was an excuse for not going to the World Cup. It was also the excuse for leaving Colombia. But then he did it all for his family. He said, but they arrived in Bogota. Actually, they arrived in New York and they were already complaining about the heat and the humidity. And then it just got worse everywhere they went along the way. And then when they got to Bogota, she was absolutely miserable. And the son, they had one son already, Gary. And Gary got dysentery immediately. It sounded dreadful. Everything I've done for my family.
Well, that's how he wants to paint it, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, So anyway, the local paper, the Stoke Sentinel, gets hold of this story. Franklin's secret flight sensation when he's found in New York. There's another headline in the Sunday Empire News. Why I left the soccer slave market, says Neil Franklin. But yeah. So at this point now, he's a bit of a pariah in England because he's broken out. He's joined this rebel league, so he's no longer affiliated with FIFA. And he lied about not playing for England. He's a very unsympathetic character. So obviously, like, public opinion is not on his side. He does have the Daily Worker, the communist newspaper, likes him, but nobody else does.
He's very well read.
Okay. So then we get his life in Colombia. This is what we've been waiting for, isn't it, Johnny?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Oh, yeah, it's magic. What's going to happen? So basically, the author says, gets to Colombia, they're like, I don't like it much. Go home, that's it. That's fucking it. Like, you get a shitload of Argentinian politics for fucking no reason. So let's have a look. So his wife, they were looking for a nice house in Colombia. The kitchens are primitive. Oh, you got primitive kitchen. I don't like the kitchen. Like, here's another one, and this is my prime fucking, like, Brits abroad. Today, this is his wife, Vera. Today we asked the hotel staff for thick soup like they make back home, but they brought us porridge. Thick. Por favor. Sopa, thick. Simile con Stoke. No entiendo. Thick soup like we get back. You fucking idiots are not going to know what thick soup is. Oh, it drives me nuts. As we mentioned before, I lived in Florida, and I took my wife somewhere. It was a special, like, there's a famous place in Florida. It's a special restaurant, and we went there, and there was an English family who come for a Disney World all that business. And there was an old lady there. I was sort of watching them, and she was like, "Can I get a cup of tea?" So they bring her a cup of tea. Like, it's iced tea. She's like, no, no, no. And like, she's so incredible. What's wrong with you? Why didn't you bring me tea? So like, she's telling this woman how to make a tea. And this poor girl is trying, like, no, I need boiling water. So they bring boiling water. And they got like these shitty tea bags. They're not like English tea bags. And this woman is just like she's, oh, why can't I get a cup of tea? Why can't? Because you're not in fucking England. It drives me. Fuck it. Why can't I get my thick soup like in Stoke? Because you're not in fucking England. Drives me nuts. Stupid Vera. All right. Okay. Good. All right. So they didn't like that. Also, they said the Argentinians playing for them were mean to them. Oh, they were mean to me. They didn't pass the ball to me. But he didn't really give it much of a go, did he? Because he only played 6 fucking games. 6.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. He arrived in May and he left in August. As you say, he played 6 games. Going back to the percentages on my Kindle, he arrived 49%. He was gone by 59%. 10% of the book is in Colombia. It should be like Flight Back from Bogota. I don't know what you should have called this book. It's a bit of it was a bit of a letdown in the sense that I was looking forward to these exotic years. Like I said, Di Stefano was there for 3 years. I had no reason to believe that Franklin wasn't only there for 6 games. But he went. They had problems with the Argentinians. The Argentinians didn't like them.
The Argies didn't like them because, well, here's a Franklin quote. Oh, they're very good exhibitionists, but they're incredibly lazy. Maybe just try and fit in, dude.
But this other guy,
in South America, the argument is never resolved until someone had his head cracked open. Just try and fit in.
Yeah, 2 months. This other guy, Billy Higgins, came from Everton. So what happened was, the whole way it's painted in the book is that because of this, footballers really like to compare themselves to slaves, don't they? Because of the slave-like situation that they had in England, the fear was, I guess, from the FA and this guy Stanley Rowe, who subsequently became the head of FIFA. The fear was that essentially this would kind of create a kind of a steady stream of players leaving England to go to South America. At the same time, there was players getting offers from Italy. So the idea of players going abroad was entirely new. And I guess the idea was that loads were going to do it to make more money. So that's kind of the situation. What happens was these guys arrive, so Mountford and Franklin arrive, and then this other guy, Billy Higgins, who was supposed to come with them, he got delayed and he arrived. He was going to play for Millonarios, the one that Di Stefano played for. And this guy, he was horrified by what he saw. He describes Franklin and Mountford's debut, and it sounded like it was rough enough. And the guy Higgins was saying that every 10 minutes there would be a stoppage and there would be a fight for 5 minutes. He said at one point the goalkeepers from either end of the pitch ran and met each other in the centre circle and started fighting each other. That doesn't sound very true. But he was also absolutely horrified when he went to the changing rooms afterwards, the dressing rooms. And, you know, these are kind of sacrosanct places in England, and he said the word he used was, it was full of urchins. There was just a lot of kids knocking around the place, and he was horrified by this, and he immediately wanted to leave. And I noted like, as the whole thing kind of happened very quickly. As I say, like, Franklin was there for 6 games and he's gone within 2 months, and Higgins left shortly after arriving as well. And they were all punished by the FA, but we can get to that. But it seems that their punishment was in direct correlation to how contrite they were about it. And the guy Higgins went back and he was like, that was a fucking terrible thing. I should never have done that. Because then, of course, at that point, the failure of the whole enterprise was the advertisement that the FA needed to kind of stem the flow of other players leaving England to go elsewhere. So suddenly the FA took a much more benign view of what had happened because it was such a failure. But there was this other guy, and this was the guy we came across more in the Di Stefano book, was this guy Charlie Mitten, who came from Manchester United. He was in... So actually, Franklin had played with Busby at Stoke, and Manchester United were staying in a hotel in New York, in Times Square, and Busby was manager. And he got a call from this Colombian lad, and Franklin on the phone saying, do you want to come down here? And Charlie Mitten is saying, yes, I will come. And he knocks on the door to Busby and is like, hi Matt, I've decided to go to Colombia. And he just fucking fucked off, left the tour and went to Colombia, which is it was pretty amazing. But this guy Charlie Mitten, he wasn't contrite at all. Like when he went back and he was hauled in front of this FA disciplinary tribunal, and he was saying like, it's just a bunch of old dudes who don't care about football. All they wanted to know is how much money I made, so I didn't tell them anything. And he got the longest ban of all because he wasn't one bit contrite. But there was some fun stories. Do you remember that one guy? There was one player who went over to take a look, and he didn't go there.
Roy Paul. Go
on.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Tell us about Roy Paul.
Yeah, he went to Colombia. Didn't tell anyone. Not even his wife. And then he had this lovely quotes like, what a country this is, full of amorous women. I've got some of his quotes from his
delicious wine and amorous women.
Delicious wine and amorous women.
Sweet wine was what he said. Lovely sweet wine.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, Roy Paul's wife commented, if he knows what's waiting for him when he gets back, he better stay in Bogotá. Also, she said he should work his passage back, working on a ship because he's a big, strong lad.
Scrubbing the decks. The newspaper quoted his wife, who didn't know he had went, and was quoting his mother-in-law and stuff. That was fun, wasn't it?
Oh, it's lovely. Yeah, well, that's it. I would rather have heard a story about George Mountford. I would have rather heard the story about Mitten. I would rather have heard the story about Roy Paul, because all of these people were considerably less pathetic than... Well,
the Mitten book, there is a book about Mitten, but it's $100 on the internet, so... we went for the Franklin one.
When we're number one in the podcast charts, then.
Yes, exactly. We're working up to it.
Here's a quote from Neil Franklin. This is 2 weeks before he headed home. Oh, forget any stories you may have heard or read to the effect that our little Potteries colony in Bogotá is divided in loyalty and regrets setting out on this gold prospecting expedition to Colombia. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Such reports have only been spread only by ill-wishers who would like to see our venture end in failure. If they are hoping to see us come crawling home with our tails between our legs, then believe me, they are doomed to disappointment. I mean, if you make that fucking statement, and that sounds like someone else wrote it for him, though, just by having made that statement, you can't then come home 2 weeks later, can you? Surely just be like, oh, I'm going to stick it out, Jesus Christ, because I just said that.
Yeah, well, of course, his whole thing is, so the wife is still pregnant. And so she's having a horrible time. So he says, I got to bring her home. So he brings her to New York. He says he's planning to come back, but he arrives in New York, and Santa Fe, the team, have not booked her onward journey from New York to London. And he's so outraged that he says, okay, I'm going home. And at this point, Santa Fe get cross with him and say, well, you broke your promise and all the rest of it. So I guess this is what you're getting at, Al, right? He is pointing the finger elsewhere, saying it's someone else's fault.
I was going to come back. If only they booked my wife a flight, I wouldn't have then bought myself. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like, all right, buy your wife a ticket, charge it to the people back home. But no, because they didn't buy him a flight, then he has to fly back to England with her. And when he's flown back to England, then he's like, you're going to go back? And he's like, oh, well, I was going to go back, but the Santa Fe officials said I'd left, so I'm not now. It's so disingenuous. It's like a kid who's forgotten to do his homework or something, blaming everything else. Yeah, there's one point, like, when he comes through home, will I refund the £2,500 signing on fee? I'm hoping Santa Fe will not ask me to. I imagine they're going to ask you to refund the fucking fee, you fucking liar. Oh, mate. Oh, yeah, this is his last word to Luis Robledo as well. Oh, I'll be back. An Englishman's word is his bond. And Luis Robledo said, he didn't like his house, so we got him another one. They stayed 2 days. They didn't like that, so we got him another one. He stayed 1 day. People in Colombia will laugh at Englishmen from now on. He's so pitiful. Oh, where's my thick soup? Like home. Oh, I got to go home. Primitive kitchen.
How hard is it to make soup, by the way?
Well, I'm sure it's very difficult if you can't speak the fucking language.
No, but not to order it.
Soup.
No, not to order. Not to order it. To make it. It can't be that hard to make soup.
I just throw some I'm not going to pretend I know how to make soup, but yeah, just.
You just put things in a. Oh, come on. You can make soup. You blend things
I
up.
can't do it. Primitive kitchen. Can't do it.
So Tom Finney, his good buddy, rocks into the boardroom and he says to you, look, you see our boy here is just back. Stoke don't want him anymore. Would you have signed Neil Franklin?
Well, nobody else wanted to, Johnny. No one did. This is my big thing. No one else was interested in him. And you would have thought football, football owners, they can turn a blind eye to a lot of things, can't they? Like if there's a good player, they can turn that. But nobody seemed that interested in him.
It's a Kaepernick situation, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a nice comparison, yeah.
He was captain when Matthews had the problem with Stoke and he was vocal in support of Matthews. So they're looking at this guy and they're thinking this guy's going to cause trouble. So no one was interested in him. So yeah, very much like Kaepernick, I thought.
I really think that is giving him too much credit, though. Like, I really, really do think that. Like,
perhaps his cause wasn't quite as noble as Kaepernick's, but he did get a club. Old Hull came back.
Can we just talk about his reintroduction into English society, though? Like, he came back, and the first public viewing of him was when he A, turned out for a cricket team. B, it was Port Vale cricket team. That's going to piss people off, surely, right away. And C, he got out for a 3-ball duck. Of course he fucking did. Like,
a 3-ball duck means he was knocked out on the third ball.
Exactly that. He scored no runs, and on the third ball he was out. Yeah, a duck is no runs.
Is no runs.
Yeah.
So he did go to Hull. And they got big money. They got big money from him. They still got was it 20 grand? 21,000?
Yeah, because he was still contracted to Stoke.
And 39,000 people came out to see him play his debut.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about here. They're saying Derby, Leicester and Wolves offered him. It's time to retire, bruv. That's all you got. Get out of there.
Well, Wolves are winning the league into the 60s, no? So come on. You got to rein that in, buddy.
I know you're right. I'm just being snide. Okay, yeah.
Really what happened after that was his career just kind of fell apart through injury, right? These calls for him to be recalled for the England squad who were playing this guy, Leslie Compton, at 38 years old. But that guy, Stanley Roux, was dead against it. Lots of people were dead against it. It seemed, he split opinions, I guess. But he went back, he captained Hull, but he was a wreck. He got knee troubles. He had knee troubles, and that was kind of it. He went to Crewe, he went to Stockport, and he was a player coach at Stockport, and he finished his career at Wellington Town, his playing career.
Yeah, very much the archetype of petering out. His career absolutely petered out. He was at one point the greatest English defender, and he ended up playing for Wellington Town. I
think he was like Beckenbauer. He seemed to be like that kind of player. That was your chance, England, to have the ball carrying, incisive passing, centre defender or libero, and you didn't take it. Out of your stubbornness. England.
I'm going to push back on that. He was not like Beckenbauer because he scored 1 goal in his whole career, the shitty bastard. Wasn't even up for headers at corners. Useless.
There was one nice episode, actually, when they were playing in Colombia. And I'm not sure, I don't think it was even a game that he was playing in, but it was one of the English players who were playing in. And there was a huge, it was because they brought over all these English referees, as we discussed in the Di Stefano one. And generally the refs tended to let things slide because if you made big calls, it caused big problems. So there's one ref who came along and he sent off a fella after 10 minutes and it just caused total chaos. But there was people piling onto the field. The game is delayed. There's a penalty. The game is delayed by 10 minutes. People are fighting each other or whatever. And eventually the penalty is taken and it's missed. I quite like that. That was nice.
He does eventually move into management where he's a record breaker. So, yeah, not bad. Well done, Neil Franklin. In fact, international jet setter in 1963, he goes to Apoel Nicosia in Cyprus. Oh, fabulous. He breaks records. Do you know what the record he broke was, Johnny?
Well, yeah, the biggest ever defeat in the Cup Winners' Cup.
16 fucking 1. I genuinely laughed out loud when I read that. Like, it remains a record in European competition, the biggest ever defeat. Well done, Neil. Well done, great manager. But they only lost the return leg 2-0.
But so, to be fair,
good.
To be fair, it was the first time the APOL players had played on grass. It was the first time they played under lights, and it was the first time they'd ever played in the rain, according to the author. That can't be true. There's no rain. Awesome. There's no rain in Cyprus. But he had to leave because of the civil war. The club kind of asked him to go.
Yeah, I bet they did. Yeah, and he's like, it's my wife from the Civil War. 16-1? It wasn't that. No.
And then he went to Colchester.
Yep. Relegated.
Down, up, down.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you'd look at that record, eh? Oh, you're a record breaker, eh? And then, this is the beauty part. This is what I love about Neil Franklin. Then he's against the abolition of the maximum wage. When Jimmy Hill actually starts making, he's against it. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like,
yeah, Charlie Mitten as well. That was a great irony, wasn't it? So Jimmy Hill becomes the head of the PFA, the Players Football Association, so the union. And there's this guy, George Eastham, who's playing for Newcastle. And he wants to leave for more money, and they won't let him go. And he's essentially not playing, and he can't move. So he brings them to court, and the House of Lords ruled that it's illegal. But Charlie Mitten was the manager for Newcastle, the fellow who jetted off to Bogota under this whole idea of like, you should be able to make money playing football. He was the manager of Newcastle at the time. And he's kind of, in his telling of it, he's very understanding of Eastham and what Eastham is trying to do. But like, every story has two sides, that kind of thing. But yeah, it seemed a bit contradictory, didn't it? A bit hypocritical.
Yeah, it absolutely did. Well, that's it. The last chapter is called Campaign for Reform, which now I think is what he'd be doing if he lived in modern day England. He'd be campaigning for a reform party. Like, yeah. Yeah. It was I found him an absolutely intolerable character, just a wet blanket if ever there was one. And maybe this is harsh, but I mean, that's what the author did to him, I think.
Well, I didn't take against him to the extent that you did. I was disappointed in how much this book was based in essentially British football boardrooms rather than, Bogota as we were kind of promised.
No, it's an outrageous title. It being called Flight to Bogota. It should be just called like Boring Contracts from the 1940s and 50s. That's what it should be called. Flight to Bogota. Oh, yes, please. Oh, what's going on? Oh, land of amorous women and sweet wine. Oh, primitive kitchens and back home, and then lots of stuff about fucking contracts. Ooh.
Yeah, there's a whole the last 10% of the book is all about this Jimmy Hill thing. And I guess what the author is trying to do is he's casting this whole Bogota period in the broader context of the fight to end football slavery. But it doesn't it's a bit of a non sequitur, really, because as you say, like, there's 10 years between what those guys going and what happened with Jimmy Hill. And as you say, a couple of the main characters had kind of switched sides in the period in between. So yeah,
I'd honestly say
they were clunky.
Their work actually worked against what they were doing. It entrenched people's views at the time, I think. I think, if anything, he worked against freeing footballers from their contracts.
Because there was an inquiry immediately afterwards, and there was various QCs involved, but they didn't do anything. They ruled in favour of the retain and transfer system, and they just increased the maximum wage from £12 to £14. But it was only later that they got rid of it. George Eastham. But that's it. That is the book, and I am going to venture a guess that you didn't love this book.
I didn't love it, Johnny. No, it was so disappointing. I really was excited about hearing their time in Bogota, and there's just no colour whatsoever. A fella parachutes into a tree. That's the best bit.
You say colour. This book is very black and white, isn't it? It's very much, as I said, football administration in the 40s and 50s. This is dry stuff when it should be, as you say, Amorous women and sweet, sweet wine. Like Che Guevara and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Di Stefano is mentioned twice in the book.
Yeah, barely mentioned at all.
Like,
there's no context about the league. Yeah, you don't hear anything about the stories of the league. We're too busy hearing about Frank Sue and like fucking Stanley Matthews going off to Blackpool. It's wild. He's taken this story and he's got all the most boring parts of it. He's ignored all the most interesting parts of it. Well done, author. Well done. 2 primitive kitchens out of 5. 2.
2 primitive kitchens. Yeah, I don't think I would recommend this book. I don't think I found it quite as bad as you. So I'll give it 2.5 primitive kitchens out of 5. 2.5 thick soups.
Yeah, 2.5 thick soups.
Yeah, it wasn't great, which is a shame. I was excited to learn about it. But yeah, as you say, there's big names in the background there. Your Tom Finneys, your Stanley Matthews.
Yeah, he's a funny one, isn't he, Stanley Matthews? Because like he really was world famous. Like in all the other books, they talk about Stanley Matthews, but you never. I don't know. From my perspective, like you think of Garincha. Oh, look at that, Garincha, so sexy. Oh, Stanley Matthews off to Blackpool. Oh, it's so dull.
With the shorts down to like halfway down his shins and stuff like that, you know.
Oh, the shorts back then, eh? So massive, so massive. Like just culottes they're playing in. Outrageous.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Al. So that's episode 40 of the Dynamo Football Book Club. We're back next week with another Injury Time where we're going to take another look at footballers' foray into music. This time looking at your international superstars and their attempts at songs. So that's next, and then the next book, Al, is
Do You Talk Football?
So this is our first book that's not focused on a player.
Yes, it is. This is more about the language of football. It's a recent book by Tom Williams. Yeah, I'm excited about this one, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as mentioned, we have our new website, dynamofootballbookclub.com, and you can find all of our episodes, but also some articles there reviewing the books, and also we have our Reddit. So get on board our Reddit, and we'd love to hear from you about books that you like, books that you recommend, books that you'd like to hear us talk about. That would be really super. Al, maybe at some point, so we've moved beyond biographies, autobiographies, we're doing all types of football books. Maybe at some point, Al, we'll even do a fiction book like Steve Bruce or something like that.
All right, well, thank you very, very much for joining us. As Johnny says, please contact us on our socials. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you next week with our musical footballers.
Thank you very much.
Let your body spin like there is nothing in life but dancing.